Welcome to John Martin Talks, where we battle ignorance and apathy daily. The growing ignorance of just how special this experiment we call the United States of America is, and the apathy that we can't or won't do anything and everything to save her. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I know a lot of you consider me like family now, so I got to tell you something before we get too deep into the show. If I have a little extra glow today, or maybe a little distracted, you'll have to forgive me, because literally as I was walking in the door to the studios this morning, my wife called me, and our youngest daughter, her water broke. She is in the hospital right now, going to have a baby. She's actually been there for about the last 12 hours or so. Because of COVID, they won't allow but one person there, which is my wife, so I can't be there. So I'm here with you, but literally by the time the show is over, I may be a granddad for the 5th time, baby. So I'm happy. Pictures to follow, I promise you, when the time comes. But we got a great show for you today. We start out with Lunacy in Louisville. Yes, in Kentucky last night. Very predictable. There were riots in Kentucky, and unfortunately a couple of police officers have been shot. My understanding as of this morning that they're not life-threatening injuries, and we've certainly got them and their families in our prayers, and we'll talk all about what happened in Louisville last night. And then the next story we're going to talk about is Kamala Harris. She's going to be in the spotlight now with the upcoming Senate hearings, the Judicial Committee hearings on whoever President Trump nominates, which is to replace Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Supposed to happen Saturday, at least that's the latest. He's going to announce it, and they're going to start hearings fairly rapidly, according to the chairman, Lindsey Graham. But of course, Kamala was the centerpiece, so to speak, in the Kavanaugh trials, or at least she thinks she was. And there's an article in The Hill that speculates that this is going to be her moment to shine or to fade, and we'll talk about that. And then if we have time, we're going to get into a story about Facebook. Protesters from Kenosha are suing Facebook. Yes, they're suing Facebook, and we'll tell you what that's all about. But before we go any further, I got to mention our sponsor, Big Daddy Unlimited. We're live from BDU Studios here in Gainesville, Florida, and they are a sponsor of our show. You can help yourself and help the show at the same time by looking at the description of our show, no matter where you're watching the show, whether it's live, good morning, howdy, how are you, on YouTube and Facebook. Spell out John Martin Talks for YouTube. We could certainly use more subscribers and views there. But no matter where you or when you're watching the video, look above the video and see a description of our show. You will see a link to our sponsors, Big Daddy Unlimited, and they provide all things Second Amendment related, from guns and ammo to tactical gear to swag, thousands of items shipped directly to you at factory direct pricing. So check them out. All right, we start with Lunacy in Louisville. This is from a New York Times article. Fired officer is indicted in Breonna Taylor case. I spoke her name like they're always saying. Taylor case. Protesters wanted stronger charges. So, Louisville, Kentucky. A grand jury, and that's a very important point that we'll elaborate on in a moment. A grand jury weighing evidence in one of the country's most contentious police shootings indicated a former Louisville police detective, because there were 3 of them, and one of them has been let go already, detective on charges of reckless endangerment on Wednesday for his role in the raid on the home of Breonna Taylor. But the 2 officers who shot Miss Taylor 6 times face no charges. Well, the first thing I want to jump out the gate with is what the story started with, a grand jury. So it wasn't the police, it wasn't President Trump, it wasn't the district attorney, it wasn't the attorney general of Kentucky. It was a grand jury. So in other words, average American citizens called to serve on a grand jury, they're the ones that decided that there were not enough evidence to file charges against the police officers. That is a very important point. But it doesn't matter to Black Lives Matter. It doesn't matter to Antifa. It doesn't really matter to the so-called peaceful protesters, because they were going to have a riot in Louisville yesterday and around the country as well, no matter what happened. The fact that they came out with no charges or no murder charges actually was a benefit to Black Lives Matter, because it just justified in their mind their reaction. If you doubt me on this, take a look at this video. Let me just set it up for you. It's a U-Haul truck that apparently was rented out by Black Lives Matter, possibly Antifa, possibly both, and it was filled with all kinds of basically riot gear and protest signs that they were ready to go and were sitting on the sidelines just waiting for this to come out so they could bum rush downtown Louisville. Check it out. So check that out. They got shields, they got bats, they got signage. They may have guns, for all I know, tucked away, because somebody had guns to shoot a couple of police officers. But that just shows you right there how organized this is. This has nothing to do with Breonna Taylor. It has nothing to do with Black lives actually mattering, or any lives mattering for that much. It is purely anarchy, a political agenda that is designed to take down the United States of America. Even a blind man ought to be able to see that. That is not to say that there weren't people out there that were trying to protest legitimately, that may have legitimate concerns. And this, let me just say too, that this whole thing with Breonna Taylor, as far as I can tell, was in fact a tragedy. It was not racially motivated. It was simply a tragedy. She should still be alive today, but she's not. And a series of events happened that caused this. And it wasn't because of any hunting of black people by police. I think that came out fairly clearly yesterday, if you cared to actually listen to the grand jury report. Protesters poured into the street in Louisville after the announcement, and at least 2 police officers were shot shortly before 9 p.m. curfew. There were also demonstrations in New York, Chicago, Milwaukee, and smaller cities around the world. I know Philadelphia, they had some in D.C. as well. But let me tell you, now I'm not saying they weren't there. I'm just telling you what I saw. I didn't see any protesters. All I saw were people ready to riot, period. I mean, just like the U-Haul. Does that look like we're getting ready to protest or to riot? You don't need shields to protest. That ought to be your first thing. So, and 2 police officers got shot. Now, who is to blame for these police officers getting shot? Well, surely it can't be the shooter or shooters, whoever. They got a suspect in custody, but he can't be blamed, right? Because he's just, justifiable shooting, I suppose. What is it they said that, a while back, that if you were a police officer, that is just part of the risk you take, like getting maybe your hand burned if you're a fry cook at McDonald's? I mean, how ridiculous is that this is an expected thing if you're a police officer? But that's the narrative the media and the left wing are putting out there. But who's to blame? As I say, certainly not the shooters, because and it couldn't be the mostly peaceful protests. As I say, I didn't see anybody there that was even talking about peace. And if you are, let me just say this. I've said this before, but if I say it, it bears repeating. If you are actually out there to protest for police brutality, if you're trying to be a peaceful protester, you just might as well go home, because it is. If you hadn't seen it by now, and I think pretty much everybody knows, the protest, if they ever had legitimacy, and I'm not saying they didn't, but it's gone now. Your protest has been hijacked by hardcore leftists, by socialist communists, because that's what they are, by fascists. Antifa is not anti-fascist. They are fascist. And Black Lives Matter, the actual organization, is by their own admission a Marxist, thus communist organization. Period. So if you're out there trying to peacefully protest, you might as well go home. And then, of course, it couldn't be somebody like Oprah Winfrey. I mean, Oprah Winfrey paid for the last few months to have billboards all around Louisville, every pretty much entrance into Louisville. Oprah Winfrey paid for billboards basically saying that the police officer should be charged with murder, not waiting for the jury, the grand jury, to come in. I mean, here's the thing. There's a couple of facts that don't fit the narrative that we were told. We were told a bunch of lies, sold a bill of goods, but the truth was out there, but most of the media ignored it. Let me just tell you a couple of things. First of all, the cops did not use a no-knock warrant. If you listen to the mainstream media, if you listen to people like Oprah Winfrey, if you listen to people like LeBron James, you think the cops just kicked the door in, guns a-blazing. That is not the fact by witness testimony to the grand jury. The police officers had a no-knock warrant, that is true, but they did not use it. They knocked on the door more than once, according to eyewitness testimony, and announced their presence, that they were coming in, that they were police officers, so loud, in fact, that it was heard in apartments adjacent to Breonna Taylor. So when they came in the door, her boyfriend was there with a loaded weapon and opened fire first on the police officers. Maybe it was a mistake. I'm not saying it wasn't, but he opened fire. In that situation, you don't have time to interview people. The police officers fired back, and Breonna Taylor was killed in the crossfire between the police officers and her boyfriend. Tragic as it is. Now, there's all kind of reports. I'm not going to get into speculation about drugs in the apartment, all of that kind of stuff. But Breonna Taylor appears to be caught in an unfortunate circumstance of the crossfire. And as I say, I'm not even bashing her boyfriend. Maybe he didn't know who it was, but eyewitness testimony said that they announced themselves, knocked on the door before coming in. And, you know, don't let the facts get in the way with a nightmare story. And of course, you couldn't blame somebody like Breonna Taylor's lawyer, Ben Crump. Listen to what he said, excuse me, after the verdict came in yesterday, or the lack thereof. He said, "This is outrageous and offensive to Breonna Taylor's memory. It is yet another example of no accountability for the genocide of persons of color by white police officers." Genocide. Now, come on. I mean, genocide. There is no evidence of genocide. Even if you assume that every one of the police shootings, I think there were 9 last year, where white police officers shot an unarmed black suspect. There was 9 of them. Way too many, but 9. That is hardly a genocide. If there is a genocide being committed against black people, it would be black on black genocide, like the crime in Chicago, in New York, out in LA, in every major Democrat-run city. But genocide, that's what this lawyer said about Breonna Taylor. That's not fanning the flames, is it? Or could it be, is Kamala Harris herself to blame? The president, or she might as well be, right? The vice president for the Democratic ticket, Kamala Harris. Remember, and I've played this before, but it certainly deserves replaying. Kamala Harris, in no uncertain terms, has said she's with the protesters. They need to keep going to the election, through the election, and even after the election. And keep in mind, she didn't say this when they had mostly peaceful protests. She said this about a month ago when it was clear that the protests were all about rioting and looting. And check out the potential next president, God help us, of the United States, Kamala Harris.
Clear that I know that there are protests still happening in major cities across the United States. I'm just not seeing the reporting on it that I had
that's right.
for the first few weeks.
That's right. But they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop. And they're not, this is a movement, I'm telling you. They're not going to stop. And everyone beware, because they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop before Election Day in November, and they're not going to stop after Election Day. And that should be, everyone should take note of that on both levels, that they're not going to let up, and they should not. And we should not.
They should not, and we should not. So she supports the violent protests happening now. She supports them happening through Election Day and even after. And she didn't even say regardless of who wins on November 3rd. They need to keep going. Back to the story. Prosecutors found that 2 officers who shot Miss Taylor, who was black, were justified in their use of force because, and they say prosecutors, actually the grand jury found it. The prosecutors didn't find that. The grand jury found it. So this story is accurate, right? But back to Miss Taylor, who was black, were justified in their use of force because they identified themselves as officers and had then come under fire from her boyfriend, who said he thought his intruders were forcing their way inside. Could be true. I'm not saying that's not true. But when officers are fired upon and one of them is actually shot, what are they supposed to do? Raise their hands and say, hands up, don't shoot? I mean, what are they supposed to do? Charges against former detective Brett Hankerson were for firing recklessly into a neighbor's apartment. So they found one of the officers at least should be indicted, not necessarily guilty, but indicted for recklessly discharging his firearm that led to bullets actually going into an apartment. Luckily, no one was struck by them as far as we know. At a news conference on Wednesday in Frankfort, that's the capital of Kentucky, by the way, Kentucky's Attorney General Daniel Cameron walked through the grand jury's decision in detail in an effort to diffuse the rage. Now, he is black, by the way, and I just say that to say, hey, you know, all this about racism, white, but you have a black DA or a black state attorney talking about it, and he was extremely emotional talking about it, and I thought he did an excellent job, by the way. I watched the whole thing. I would encourage you to watch it, but it's interesting. This is what he said. The decision before my office is not to decide if the loss of Breonna Taylor's life was a tragedy. The answer to that question is unequivocally yes, and I don't disagree with him. But, you know, these rioters were planning to do this all along, and he's up there telling you that that it's not his job to decide guilt or innocence. It's up to the jury, and the grand jury did not find enough evidence. In fact, they found evidence that supported a justified shooting. That does not mean that the lady, Miss Taylor's life, was justifiably taken. That's not the same thing. But these people out on the streets, they don't care. Because I want to play a video for you right now that they were chanting in Louisville yesterday. I want you to listen carefully to what they're saying. They're basically saying, we didn't get it, so burn it down. In other words, they don't get the verdict or the outcome they want, then we have to take it to the street. If you can justify that, if you're sitting out there right now saying that's justified, then you don't believe in the Constitution of the United States of America. You don't believe in the greatness of America, and you want to, in fact, destroy America. Mistakes will be made. The innocent people will die. Guilty people will be set free. That is just the way it is. But that does not justify that our system, as imperfect as it is one of the greatest that mankind has ever come up with. And if we abandon it, then the mob rules. We are none of us safe, including the mob itself. But I want to play this video. This is what they were chanting. These peace-loving people were chanting in the streets of Louisville yesterday. Check it out. We didn't get it. Burn it down. So if you do, so the hardcore left, progresso world, which is on our doorstep, and let me tell you, it doesn't matter who you are, you're not going to like progresso world. Think about this for a moment. They're saying that they're justifying that if they don't get the verdict they want, then they're going to burn it down. So we're to live under threat. Juries are, judges are, attorneys are, American people, you and your neighborhood are supposed to live under the threat that we have to decide guilt or innocence based on what the mob says, or they're going to burn it down. If that's the way we're going to judge things in America, it's over, ladies and gentlemen. It is over. That's why I say this election is bigger than Donald Trump. He is the man we need to reelect, but it's bigger than him because this is for the very soul of our nation. Because I take the progressives at their word. They want to burn it down, and they're proving that daily. Mr. Cameron, he's the state's attorney or attorney general. Mr. Cameron, Republican, acknowledged that not everyone would be satisfied with the charges, and said that as a black man, he understood the pain that was brought about by Miss Taylor's death. He went on to say, justice is not often easy and does not fit the mold of public opinion, and it does not conform to shifting standards. So yes, culture may shift, but the law is supposed to be the law. And if it can be done at the whim of any particular shifts in the public mood, then it's not worth the paper it's printed on. I want to play you right now, because I think Mr. Cameron is a hero. I think he's doing a great job. I think he represents the finest traditions of law enforcement. I don't care about his skin color. I don't. The left seems to be, that's all that matters. But listen to this contributor to MSNBC. I don't know much about her. I watched it in real time and I was shocked, and I played it again this morning and was shocked as well. And it takes a lot to shock me. But it kind of reminds me of something Biden said about that you ain't black if you vote for Donald Trump. This lady here is essentially saying that if you stand up for the rule of law, you're not black. So check this out.
Law is not adequate to respond to a tragedy. That is quite a remarkable statement, a striking statement.
Well, listen, not only is he being intellectually dishonest about that, you know, I find all of his remarks with regards to this whole entire press conference offensive. And let me just speak to this whole celebrity influencer thing. While they can't speak for Kentuckians, let me say this as a black woman. He does not speak for black folks. He's skin folk, but he is not kinfolk. And so just like he thinks they can't speak for Kentucky because he's up there with a black face, he does not speak for all of us. This was not a tragedy. This was a murder. He should be ashamed of himself.
Wow. Wow. Think about that. What's she saying? This guy, what did she say? He's skin folk, not kinfolk. He's standing up there with a black face, like he's wearing blackface like the governor of Virginia or somebody like that, man. I mean, come on. Really? Is that where we've come in this country? Martin Luther King's dream, if what she is saying is true, it is dead. Martin Luther King's dream, and I hate to be the one to say it, if she's right, and God, I hope she's not, but if she is in fact right, then the dream is over. Because remember, central to Martin Luther King's dream was that he dreamed of a day when you would judge people by the content of their character, which this Cameron fella seems to be overwhelmed with character. I mean, he's got tons of character. But judge by the content of your character rather than the color of your skin. But the left, that's all that matters. So you're righteous if you're black, unless you don't drink the Kool-Aid and spout out the narrative. Then you're wearing blackface. I mean, it is crazy, man, and sad. But if she's right, and as I say, God help us if she is, then Dr. King's dream is officially over. And I don't say that with any joy whatsoever. Tensions boiled over at several protests nationwide. In Buffalo, a truck drove through a group of people who had gathered to protest. In Florida, that's getting ready to be legal, by the way. Our governor is about to put forward a bill that says you can't take over a highway. You get risk getting run over. It said who gathered to protest. According to a local reporter at the scene, demonstrators blocked highway traffic in Milwaukee, and protesters who marched from Brooklyn and the Lower East Side of Manhattan yelled at patrons in restaurants, "Wake up! This is your fight too." Well, let me tell you right now, I am awake. I am woke. And the thing is, I'm woke to what the Constitution says, that we have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit, not the guarantee, but the pursuit of happiness. And from what I can see, the Black Lives Matter, the Antifa, these mostly peaceful protests are trying to take that very right from me. They're trying to deny my right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I'm as woke as it comes on that, and I will defend your right and my right to the rights under the Constitution. So help me God, I will. I'm taking that oath to you right now. But think about this. I want to play a video. This is a while back when Chris Cuomo of CNN fame and the brother to the grandma killer, Governor Cuomo, said in a video on CNN, he talked about the right to peaceful protests and basically questioned Why do protests have to be peaceful? Check it out. And I'm going to answer his question.
Citizens to take to the streets. Persistent and poisonous inequities and injustice. And please, show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
I'll show you right there in that meme we just put up. If we can post that again. It's in the Constitution, moron. It is the First Amendment. God almighty. Show me where peaceful, it says right there that the protest, the right to freedom of assembly, peaceful assembly, is guaranteed in the U.S. Constitution. There is no right to violent assembly, but the left, it's just unbelievable. But Billy Bob, he's telling me, whispering in my ear, if you don't know this, my psychic sidekick, Billy Bob Bass. He's got a Twitter handle, by the way. It's at Billy Bob Bass 1, and mine is at John Martin Talks. But he reminds me that progressives don't believe in the Bill of Rights anymore. And I think he's right about that. The left, the Democratic Party, I'm not talking about every Democrat. I'm talking about the leadership of your party, if you're a Democrat out there. They don't believe in the Bill of Rights. Tell me one they believe in. You just heard Cuomo trashing the First Amendment, and he knows what he's talking about. You also, freedom of speech is being trashed on a daily basis, period. And, of course, the Second Amendment, don't even get me started on that. By the way, every time I mention the Second Amendment, I got to remind you about our sponsor, Big Daddy Unlimited. Check out the description of our show. Go to where BDU, Big Daddy Unlimited. You can get anything related to Second Amendment, from guns, ammo, right down to tactical gear, thousands of items, factory direct priced, right to your doorstep. Check out our sponsor link in the show description above the video. But I'd like to ask, one of the questions might be in the upcoming debate to ask both Biden and Kamala in her debate. Could you please tell me what of the Bill of Rights, don't have to get all the way up through the amendments, but the first 10, otherwise known as the Bill of Rights, could you please tell me which of these you actually still believe in? Because I can't find any of them they do. But, chime in on Facebook, by the way, or YouTube, and tell me show me where they believe, what amendments what part of the Bill of Rights they still believe in. I'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can. All right, we're going to move on here to a story from The Hill, the publication called The Hill. And this is about the upcoming inevitable Senate confirmation hearings about the SCOTUS pick that President Trump is going to announce over the weekend. Harris faces pivotal moment with Supreme Court battle. So they're basically saying, because she is on the Judiciary Committee and that she is obviously the VP candidate for the Democratic Party, that she's going to be the number one focus, certainly, of the media. I don't question that at all. And this is her moment to shine, like she did in the Kavanaugh case. And we'll talk about that. Senator Kamala Harris is set to step into the spotlight as the fight over President Trump's Supreme Court nominee takes over the Senate less than 6 weeks before the November election. Think about that. We got less than 6 weeks now to go to the election, hopefully the re-election of Donald Trump. Man, time is moving fast. But I wonder, is she going to be able to overshadow Spartacus this time? You remember who I'm talking about, old Corey Spartacus Booker? Remember, he said, "This is my Spartacus moment." And you remember they were calling, even the mainstream media was calling it the Kamala Harris, Cory Booker primary in there, because they were trying to outdo each other in the Kavanaugh hearing when they were on the Senate Judiciary Committee. And we know both of them got overshadowed apparently by Joe Biden, because they both lost without getting any votes, period, pretty much. But it's going to be interesting to see if they try to overshadow each other this time. As both a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee and nominee, talking about Kamala Harris, for vice president, Harris will likely be the most closely watched Democrat when the panel questions Trump's choice to replace the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And that's probably true. She will be the center focus, certainly of the Democrat, probably of the media, period. All eyes will be on Kamala. I'm wondering if she's actually going to ask any questions, because the Democrats, from what I can see, and Republicans are guilty from time to time of this, well, they don't really ask questions. They just make statements. You remember when Barr was before that House committee, And they'd ask him a question, he'd try to answer it, and they go, you're taking up my time, sir. You're taking up my time. And Barr finally said, well, I thought that's why you called me here, was to answer questions. But no, it is to make political statements. Trust me on this. The Democrats, especially on this Senate Judiciary Committee, I'll be surprised if they actually ask one question. And I'm wondering if they're going to, if they do ask a question, if the nominee starts to answer, they go, well, you're trying to take up my time, It's crazy. It'll be crazy. And I guess that's what we're destined for. The ensuing battle, they're saying. Now think about this. They describe the battle. The Senate is supposed to advise and consent according to the U.S. Constitution. Why has it got to be a battle? They're supposed to advise and consent. Why the battle? So the press wants it to be a battle. It's funny that every time there is a Republican-nominated Supreme Court justice, it's a battle. It's an absolute battle. But it's not so much when it's the other way around. Maybe the Democrats have it right. I'm not sure. The ensuing battle will offer her, talking about Kamala, an opportunity to take on a more visible role and draw on her strengths during a campaign. So she's going to draw on her strengths? I thought they were going to be sitting in like judges' chairs kind of thing. Because to me, unless she's on a couch, I don't see how she exercises all of her strengths. Hey, I said it, man. I don't hope you don't ban me for it. But it says to draw on her strengths during a campaign in which she has so far maintained a mostly low-key profile. Really? What I can see, she's the only one campaigning. Joe Biden doesn't even campaign on a daily basis. Think about that. As the article started out, we're 6 weeks out, less than 6 weeks out, and Joe Biden at best comes out of his bunker every other day. President Trump, man, is holding multiple rallies every day and being the leader of the free world. And Joe Biden can barely, Poxitani Joe, can barely come out the hole. As far as I can see, Kamala's the only one actually campaigning, which might be interesting while she's tied up with this process. We'll see. Supreme Court nomination hearings typically draw a comparatively large viewing audience. More than 20 million people watched Justice Brett Kavanaugh's hearing. Did he actually have a hearing, or was it like it was kind of like what Justice Thomas said when, by the way, Joe Biden was presiding over the committee, that it was a modern day lynching. That's what Justice Thomas said about Joe Biden's hearing, a modern day lynching. Think about that. But it didn't get that much coverage. But so Brett Kavanaugh, anyway, giving voters a prime opportunity to see Harris in action after months of campaign largely waylaid by the pandemic. Oh, really? So the thing that's slowing them down is the pandemic. It's not slowing President Trump's down, but of course the mainstream media will tell you it's because he doesn't care about his supporters. He wants them all to die. Yeah, that makes a logical sense. President Trump wants all of his supporters to die and be sick. I mean, how sick do you have to be to actually believe that? My big question is, will the Democrats actually behave themselves during these hearings? Because I agree they're going to be one of the most watched, if not the most watched, political TV event maybe in history, at least for a while. So I wonder if the Democrats have the discipline to behave, because it's going to be a woman appointee, right? And they're going to attack. What if it's this Coney woman? Barrett, Miss Barrett, I think's her name. I mean, she is not only a professor from Notre Dame and a distinguished judge now, but she has 7 children. 2 of them are Haitian adopted kids. I'm assuming they're probably black. So if she's the choice, and of course, if the other lady's a choice, she's a Cuban American. So the Democrats are going to be attacking women in front of a nationally televised audience. I don't know if they can behave themselves or not. It's going to be interesting. It does put them in a bit of a spot. Said one Republican strategist, how do they feel, talking about the Democrats, about having her, not Vice President Biden, but Senator Harris being the lead front and center every day arguing against the nominee? Well, she's the lead front and center now, essentially trying to dissect and potentially attack a female jurist, kind of what I just said, conservative or not. There are just a lot of dynamics that are going to be incredibly tricky for her. And I agree with that assessment. It's going to be tricky for her. But they're saying, what is Joe Biden going to think about her being out in front? Well, Billy Bob tells me that we can ask Joe Biden about that. And I told you who Billy Bob was. Let's ask Joe Biden what he thinks about Kamala Harris being out in front. Joe, what do you think? Here's his answer.
He's going to relaunch that effort and keep pushing. Harris-Biden administration is going to relaunch that effort and keep pushing. The Harris-Biden administration is going to.
The Harris-Biden administration. So Joe is already telling you that it's the Harris-Biden administration. So I guess he don't care because he knows that she is the actual front runner in this and that she's the president. Joe don't know, man. I feel sorry for the dude, but Joe don't know, man. He don't know. He just, like the one person I heard say a while back, what they ought to do for Joe, no matter what happens in the election, is just take his basement, make it look like the Oval Office and tell him he won, and he'll be happy as a clam, man, in there. Check out this. A Marquette University survey taken just before Ginsburg's death and released Wednesday found 59% of Biden supporters rate a Supreme Court nomination as very important, compared with 51% of Trump supporters. Now, you may question the legitimacy of that. I'm not necessarily. The Democrats have always held the Supreme Court not in high esteem, but as a legislative body. That's why they were pounding on the doors of Kavanaugh. That's why they were basically didn't care if they destroyed him and his family, and they put all kind of lies up there, because the Democrats' whole agenda can't be passed by the American people. Look at everything that is basically near and dear to the Democrats' hearts, and pretty much 99.9% of it came through the Supreme Court, not legislative bodies. So that's why, so they're going to make a fuss about this. Trump supporters, on the other hand, they take for granted that Donald Trump promises made, promises kept. Is there any Trump supporter out there that is surprised that Donald Trump has decided to go forward with the Supreme Court nomination? Anybody surprised by that? Now, you may be surprised by the Senate getting behind him. I can get you, but is there anybody who loves Donald Trump that is surprised by him doing his constitutional duty? They just take it for granted. But let me tell you, people have been asking me, well, what can we do and everything else? Here's what you need to do. You need to call your senators, your Republican senators. Call your Democrat ones too if you want to. It's probably a waste of time. But if you have a Republican senator or senators in your state, you need to call them up and demand basically that they hold the confirmation and vote to confirm whoever Donald Trump puts up there before the election, not after, before. That's something you can do. Call your senators. Harris, drawing on her past experience as a prosecutor, has already shown the ability to parlay her role on the Judiciary Committee into money and energy. Parlay her role. So that's what this is all about. This is all a big theater. That's all it is. She's going to be, I guess, a star in the theater there. One activist said this: Kamala was front and center, talking about the Kavanaugh hearings. She led the fight against Kavanaugh, and that moment built an intense amount of passion from people across the country. That's true, particularly for women and party activists, because men, we're supposed to just sit down and shut up, right? All women are to be to believe, unless they accuse Joe Biden. So it says you can track Kamala's ascent to becoming a significant national figure to that moment. Kamala's ascent. She got up off the couch. You know, it's going to be a show. There's no doubt about it. And she's going to try to be the star of the show, no doubt. But who will it help? Will it help the Democrats? I don't think they can hold back. I think they will attack whoever President Trump nominates up there with a vengeance. And that's probably going to backfire on them. But the choice, one thing about it, the choice after this hearing, if it wasn't before, it will be, and it should be now when you watch what's happening around the country. The choice, and this, Biden said this, and I have to say I agree with him on this. The choice for who to vote for president has never been clearer. Now, I think it's certainly Donald Trump, but there's no doubt that we have the clearest choice. There should be on election day really no undecided voters by that time. And if you are, I wonder what you're undecided about. Do you want Progresso world, where basically they say, like in that video, we didn't get it, so let's burn it down? And as Don Lemon said just recently on his show with the great Chris Cuomo, who doesn't even know that the Constitution talks about peaceful assembly. But Don Lemon said that when it comes to this Supreme Court nominee, if we don't get our way, he said the same thing the people in the streets of Louisville said. We need to burn it down, tear it down, the whole system, tear it down. So the choice is going to be clear, and it's really not Donald Trump versus Joe Biden. It's whether you believe in the Constitution of the United States of America. It comes down to what Benjamin Franklin said when asked about what they'd given us. He said, a republic if you can keep it. And that's what this election at the bottom line is about November 3rd. It is about the Constitution, the republic, if we can keep it. That is the choice right there. And Donald Trump, by his own nature, is the constitutionalist, and Joe Biden and his bunch don't believe in the Constitution. So that's your choice, in my opinion. Tell me where I'm wrong. All right, let me check my time. We got a few more minutes left, just enough time to kind of get into this next story. And it's about Facebook. And I got to tell you, anytime I talk about Facebook, I got to give due deference, pray a rug, whatever, to algorithm. Because algorithm is the most powerful person in the world, and I don't want to get on the wrong side of Al. So let me just tell you, I'm going to talk a little bit about Facebook, but I love you, Al. I'm going to send you some of them chocolate-covered cherries for Christmas, I promise you. Facebook hit with lawsuit over Kenosha Protest Deaths, according to ABC News. For individuals, including the partner of one of the victims of the deadly Kenosha, Wisconsin shootings, have filed a lawsuit against Facebook. The suspect gunman, Kyle Rittenhouse, and 2 leaders of online groups. So basically, they're suing these Facebook groups, these so-called militia groups, and this young man, Kyle Rittenhouse, which if you haven't seen the latest video, actually seems to show that he was shooting. He shot 3 people, killed 2, basically in self-defense. Now, you could argue whether he should have even been there or not, but he was. And once your life is threatened, I think your instincts take over. And he decided he was going to choose life over death. The suit filed in the federal court of the Eastern District of Wisconsin on Tuesday alleges Facebook failed to delete 2 pages on its platform that the lawsuit says encourage violence against protesters. So the protesters were peaceful and the white supremacists were the violent ones. That's the mantra going on in Louisville right now, that somehow it's not been hijacked by Black Lives Matter. The protests hadn't been hijacked by Antifa, but by white supremacists. That's the new mantra that's out there, man. It's crazy. But the suit claims this may have ultimately led 17-year-old Rittenhouse, they're talking about these Facebook groups, to allegedly kill 2 people and injure a 3rd. So I'm wondering, does Facebook really have that much power? I know Facebook is powerful, but do they really have the power to motivate people to go out and shoot people? Man, if they do, you're pretty weak-minded. But the 2016 elections, the Russians through Facebook, they spent like $4,700 on Google and supposedly $100,000 on Facebook ads, that they're the reason Facebook ads by Russian bots are the reason Donald Trump is president. It is just ludicrous. I've said this before, but if I say it bears repeating. They tell you that in 2016, this is what the left wants you to believe. They want you to believe that somewhere in a basement in Michigan somewhere, there was a guy or a gal that had a hat on that said, "I'm with Hillary," and had a Hillary bumper sticker on their Prius. And they were eating Hot Pockets, maybe in their mom and daddy's basement, and playing a video game and looking at Facebook. And they're going, "Man, Hillary, Hillary, I'm with her." And all of a sudden, a Russian ad came on and they went, "Oh my God." They threw away the hat, put on a MAGA hat, and started going, "Trump, Trump, Trump, lock her up." And they burned the Prius. All of that was because of Russia. It had nothing to do with you being an American patriot, nothing to do with the great campaign that Donald Trump ran on. It was all about Russian bots on Facebook. The plaintiffs said they were terrorists. Think about this. The plaintiffs, the people that shot first at this young Mr. Rittenhouse, that attacked him when he was on the ground, they were the ones terrorized, assaulted, harassed, and placed in so much fear when facing the business end of a military-grade assault rifle. That I would agree with. You look at the business end of an AR-15, you might be pucker time. said assault rifles that they determined it was too dangerous to continue to protest according to the complaint. So Black Lives Matter was afraid of the armed resistance people, the Boogaloo Boys or something they call them. It's just absolutely nuts. I mean, the way they want you to believe. Be interesting to see if Facebook pays out some kind of ransom on this kind of stuff. But I never knew that Facebook was that powerful. I mean, I'm glad to be on it. I want to give due deference to not only Mr. Zuckerberg and Mark Zuckerberg we trust, but Mr. Algorithm. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the show as much as I've enjoyed bringing it to you. Please go directly to John Martin Talks Facebook page, like it, share it with others. Check out our YouTube channel. Spell it all the way out, John Martin Talks. Remember, you can also watch us rebroadcast on America's Voice News. Download the free app on Android or iPhone. If you're watching live on Facebook this morning on America's Voice News, howdy, how are you? Good morning. But they rebroadcast as a late night show along all your streaming channels, Roku, Fire Stick, Apple TV, Channel 219, Dish Network, and the Pluto channel. Many ways to see John Martin Talks. So I'll pray for your family, like I say all the time. You pray for mine. Pray for my little granddaughter to be delivered healthy, wealthy, and wise this morning. If you didn't know, I'm going to be a grandfather. Maybe right now, may already be. For the fifth time, man. It is a joy to live in this great country. So I'll pray for your family. You pray for mine. Like I say, each and every day, from my heart, from my family to yours. Have a blessed day. Headphones.